Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. My name's Charles Green. I'm the Director of Thought Leadership here at Belatrix Software. And firstly, thank you all very much for joining today's call, where I'm going to be outlining some of the core trends and dynamics that we see are resulting in a healthcare revolution, as well as some of the work that we're doing in the space. For those of you not familiar with Belatrix, we are a leading provider of software development services with expertise in product and mobile application development. Our focus is on innovation and really shaping the concepts and ideas of our clients into world-class software products. We have delivery centers in Mendoza and Buenos Aires in Argentina, as well as Lima, Peru. But before we go any further, I should mention that today's session is going to be very open, so while I'm going to be presenting for much of the next 20-25 minutes, please feel free to ask questions either by the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen or via Twitter, where we're going to be live tweeting throughout using the hashtag #HealthSolutions2016. Our agenda for today then is really very straightforward. Firstly, I'm going to outline the key dynamics at play in US healthcare today, and I'm going to do this from the perspective of healthcare providers, insurance providers, and of course patients as well. And then I'm going to finish the presentation by outlining a couple of examples of the work that Belatrix has been doing in the healthcare industry. Now, for us, healthcare is one of our key industries alongside financial services, so we have a wide experience working with healthcare companies in helping them achieve the results they're looking for and better outcomes. But first of all, kicking off the presentation then, it's clear that the healthcare industry is in the midst of change which is happening at unprecedented scale and speed. And this change is being brought about by a variety of factors, from demographic changes to rapidly improving technology which provides new options, particularly in the world of digital health, to also shifting expectations from individuals about healthcare and their own relationship with healthcare providers. So we can really call this that healthcare is undergoing a revolution. But within this revolution, the US healthcare system continues to face numerous problems. It is fraught with inefficiency. There are barriers to access to care for both the insured and uninsured. There are low utilization rates, and there's a slow adoption of new methods and approaches. And actually the numbers are staggering. I want to present to you a couple of statistics here to demonstrate what I mean by some of these problems that the US healthcare system faces. And as I'm sure you're well aware, the US spends more on healthcare than any other country in the world, approximately 17.7% of GDP in 2013. But at the same time, US healthcare spending grew faster than GDP every year between 1960 and 2010, with the exception of just 7 years. And within these numbers, there are statistics and stories of administrative costs and waste, which really are quite staggering. There was a widely cited report just a couple of years ago from the Institute of Medicine, which estimated that the US lost $750 billion a year from unnecessary services, to inefficient care delivery, to excessive administrative costs, to inflated prices, prevention failures, and even fraud. Therefore, in the midst of both a potential healthcare revolution driven by digital health, as well as the urgent need to drive efficiencies and improve patient access, how can the US healthcare system learn the lessons from the health systems, like different countries, vendors, and innovators from other parts of the world? How can they take these lessons and drive improvements both to US Medicaid as well as the myriad of actors that make up the US healthcare system? And to answer this question, I want to examine the healthcare industry from the perspective of the three main actors that make up the healthcare industry. That's the insurance providers, the healthcare providers, and of course the patients. And each of these players, each faces their own set of individual challenges. We see from the insurance providers that they're seeking to improve member experiences, but at the same time they're faced with a variety of challenges in how can they lower their administrative overheads. For healthcare providers, they also are, they're increasingly challenged to improve their efficiency, but they also need to be providing better care to patients. And finally, patients want access to data, they want fewer barriers to better care, and they want greater visibility to their costs. So now what I want to do is to take each of these in turn and go into a bit more detail about each of them individually. So first up, I want to look at the healthcare insurance providers or payers. And the first thing here that we can say with regard to insurance providers is that today they are faced with burdening administrative overheads and costs. But at the same time, it's paramount that they need to better satisfy their patients and improve the member experience by providing better overall customer experiences. Now, as a concrete example of this, insurance claims are still typically submitted after treatment, which has a twofold impact really. Firstly, patients are unsure of what treatment or what costs are going to be covered, and at the same time, doctors are unsure how much they're going to be paid. But we are starting to see changes to the overall situation, and insurance providers are starting to make changes. For example, following regulatory changes, patients today have a greater choice regarding their insurance provider. Those payers who are unable to provide a positive experience, for example, with regard to rapid reimbursement or to the clarity of coverage, are going to find themselves losing out to competition. And we see this happening where leading insurance providers are offering their customers new tools and services to help manage their healthcare expenses. And this is providing a better customer experience with greater visibility and transparency to patients. And this is particularly important given the increase in healthcare deductibles, which have surged 67% since 2010 alone. And that's just for employee-sponsored healthcare plans. It's clear then that insurance providers are working overtime to improve the member experience. And this is going to be particularly critical as they face an increasingly competitive environment going forward. And there's really a need to take account of this and understand that health plan members really today do have greater choice regarding health plans, providers, benefits, and treatment options. And if you're not satisfying your customer, if you're not satisfying your members, then they are going to go elsewhere. But now let's turn to look at the healthcare providers. Healthcare providers are looking to improve their efficiency while providing even better and more appropriate care to patients. They're really challenged to manage both the clinical and administrative costs as well within that. And indeed, unnecessary care and inefficient services remain some of the major factors underlying excessive medical waste and expenditure. At the same time, there's more opportunity for healthcare providers to provide more preventative care, for example, via lifestyle monitoring, using digital health initiatives, which are going to result in better patient outcomes, lower costs, and greater patient centricity from healthcare providers. And if we think, for example, as one example, how can physicians today better use digital tools such as mobile technology to deliver appropriate and more preventative care to patients, and as a result avoid potentially expensive treatments later on. And the research surrounding this area suggests that the adoption of digital therapies could drive about $300 billion in healthcare system savings. We also need to examine the regulatory changes which are on the horizon, which are going to push providers to delivering more value and outcome-based care as well. In 2015, for example, the Medicare Access and Chip Reauthorization Act of 2015 was signed into law, and that aims to push the adoption of alternative payment models and ultimately the adoption of more value-based care. And to achieve all of this, greater coordination is going to be required between patients, caregivers, physicians, and all the other players in the healthcare industry. Access to real-time health data, including electronic health records and lifestyle monitoring, as well as point-of-care guidelines, eligibility checks, authorization, and invoicing are all going to be required in order to result in better provider-patient collaboration and ultimately providing better outcomes to patients. And thirdly, and most importantly, I now want to turn to the patients themselves who want to see fewer barriers to care, they want to see greater visibility to costs, and to achieve that, they want access to data so they can make their own healthcare decisions. Unfortunately, within the US healthcare system, patients continue to face non-financial barriers to care. And that's particularly important because for many people, access equates to affordability as well. Meanwhile, there are also changing expectations of the role and potential of healthcare. For example, increasingly empowered patients are taking greater responsibility for their own care. So they're using, for example, social media and other internet-based tools to make decisions to inform their healthcare decisions and guide their own purchases. And indeed, as well as they're using that to increasingly research and ultimately treat themselves. And as a result, physicians need to be shifting to deliver proactive and preventative care, such as assessments, screenings, tests, and education. A greater patient centricity is underlying the delivery of healthcare. And while patient centricity is a bit of a buzzword within the health sector, it does reflect a fundamental change in how healthcare actors think about care and achieving outcomes which are in the patient's best interest. However, to achieve this, greater coordination is going to be required, again, between the patients, caregivers, other providers, and payer case managers, and the other players within the healthcare system. And also, finally, I want to mention that the cost sensitivity of patients who have been faced with increasing deductibles in their insurance plans and are becoming increasingly price sensitive about treatments and are demanding greater cost transparency from insurance providers. What costs are they liable for, and when can they see that? Can they see that upfront with regard to the treatment which they're going to be provided with? And those insurance providers that are unable to enable members and providers to make their own decisions are going to find themselves losing out to competition as well. So now I've discussed some of the key dynamics with regard to healthcare providers, with regard to patients, and with regard to insurance providers as well. But now I want to switch to discuss the role of technology in overcoming the major challenges that healthcare faces today. And given the complexity and the diversity of challenges that healthcare providers are faced with, new strategies and in particular technological tools are needed to overcome them. Indeed, the implementation of the Affordable Healthcare Act made a major and often overlooked change to the US healthcare system in shifting the focus to a value-based model. And this has placed the onus on healthcare providers giving the best care for patients rather than supplying more and more treatment. And technology plays a really critical role here. For example, through mobile health initiatives, how can we really focus on providing the best possible care for our patients? And technology is absolutely critical. The use of technology, and in particular dedicated software, really has tremendous potential also to increase the efficiency and improve the coordination between the different players and providers in the US healthcare system. Software has the potential to reduce administrative waste while simultaneously improving stakeholder communications and processes. And technology has already been demonstrated its ability to improve clinical outcomes for patients while also reducing inappropriate and unnecessary treatments. So we can really see 5 main areas where healthcare efficiency can and must be improved. And we argue that technology, and in particular software-based tools, will be critical to achieving each of these. So firstly, technology can play a significant role in reducing administrative waste. Administrative spending currently accounts for approximately 9% of US healthcare spending. However, there is significant potential to cut down on this waste, such as by implementing simpler and more standardized billing processes. Implementing such processes will also improve credentialing, compliance, and oversight, and would significantly reduce waste. Software, meanwhile, can also be used to bring stakeholders together, can be used to improve the collaboration and coordination between the various and complex actors in the US healthcare system. And this can really be significantly improved by software. Real-time visibility can only be enabled if there are the systems, the processes, and the technology area all outlined and all very clear. Thirdly, that clinical outcomes can be improved. Improving the data capture and analysis represents the core first step in improving clinical outcomes. The digitization, meanwhile, of medical records and creating electronic healthcare records means that healthcare transactions can be immediately processed and analyzed, and ultimately will result in better and improved clinical outcomes. Fourthly, that it will be possible to reduce inappropriate and unnecessary care. Not only can unnecessary treatment harm patients, but they are also a major part of medical waste in the US. Estimates for unnecessary care range from 10% to 30% of healthcare spending, which is a very significant percentage. And we believe that software also has a fundamental role here in reducing some of this inappropriate care. And finally, that technology can be used to reduce and control macro-wide costs. And really the first step here is to provide the visibility into costs. Again, the only viable way to achieve this is via the implementation of software-based tools. So in conclusion then, we can see how technology has the potential to drive efficiencies in the US healthcare sector, while also enabling patients to receive better and more appropriate care. Technology has the potential to drive the shift to more value-based care. It provides the tools that providers, payers, and patients require to work more closely together and ultimately create better outcomes. But here I want to shift the focus a little bit and have a look and see what this really looks like in practice. What does the use of technology look like in practice? And what are some of the examples of some of the work that we're doing here at Belatrix? Now, as I already mentioned, Belatrix has widespread experience working with healthcare companies in their digital initiatives because we believe technology and in particular software can make a real difference to the healthcare sector. Indeed, healthcare is one of our most important industries alongside the work we do in financial services. So here I want to focus on one particular case study which illustrates how one healthcare provider undertook extensive research into their patients to improve the experience of those patients of going to a physician or their doctor, while at the same time increasing their efficiency by reducing the number of missed or cancelled appointments. Now, this is an organization which has a reputation for helping improve communication and workflows between the different constituents in the US healthcare system. Their software platform makes it really easy for care managers and providers to communicate and share information. The company, however, was faced with the problem that patients continued to regularly miss their appointments, or they were ill prepared for surgery. They were not being provided with timely updates or the relevant information to prepare themselves correctly. Now, as I'm sure you're aware, that effective patient management really relies on pre-operative appointments with patients. So individuals know what they should and also what they shouldn't be doing before going to surgery. And of course, following the appointment, following the surgery, that they follow on phone calls and regular check-ins, critical to tracking their progress following this. And it was therefore decided to examine the ways in which this company could help patients better adhere to their care plan. How could they create stronger relationships between them and their care coordinator? And to achieve that, this company decided to work with Belatrix and to engage Belatrix's user experience consulting services. Now, our UX consulting services were used to help this company better understand the patient journey. They wanted to understand who the patient was, their concerns, their priorities. How do they feel about the US healthcare system? Is it meeting their needs, and how much trust do they have in their healthcare provider? Do they use technology or mobile applications before they go to surgery? What is the best way to contact them and provide guidance and support? So that was all the different aspects of the patient journey which this company wanted to better understand. So what we did, we utilized a combination of design thinking and user experience principles. And really by using the principles of design thinking, our researchers were able to put themselves into the position of a typical patient. And in this case, it was typically someone older than 65 years old who lives in the US and is about to undergo surgery. So what we did, we conducted in-depth research following the user experience process which we follow here at Belatrix, and that involved brainstorming, identifying key issues, conducting in-depth research, and based on that research we were able to create numerous personas, and based on that we were then able to make changes to both the front end and the back end of their software platform. And those technical and UX improvements to the product in turn led to direct business benefits and improved patient experiences. So it's clear that by using the UX process combined with our skills and knowledge of design thinking, key patient considerations could be taken into account while improving the product. And this process ensured a much deeper level of patient centricity than what was possible before, and also made sure that any changes were based on rigorous user research. The second case study that I want to turn to now is in the pharma or the biopharmaceutical industry. And this is also a key part of the healthcare sector. It's a little bit to the side of what we've been discussing so far in the presentation, but I think is that I wanted to include it here today because I think it's particularly relevant and a particularly interesting example of where and how technology has been used to improve outcomes. And firstly, just give some background. We were tasked, we started working with this company based within the context that the biopharmaceutical industry is really undergoing major transformation at the moment, and that transformation is being driven by the changing face of healthcare, which we've been outlining in this presentation. And the ability of pharma to respond successfully to these challenges depends really on improving the use of information and data. The critical here was that by improving the use of information, a pharma could improve their clinical trial efficiency, they can improve collaboration, and they can use data to improve their R&D processes. Now, one of the areas within pharma which has been impacted by technology has been the medical affairs group. Now, in the past, if you weren't familiar with medical affairs, in the past, the medical affairs group was in a pharmaceutical firm, their responsibility was to answer medical questions from healthcare providers. Typically, the role was characterized by sharing timely information with key stakeholders and combining and synthesizing the relevant medical information or research. However, this role has significantly increased in scale and complexity. And because of the increasing importance of data, information, and other factors, medical affairs has become the key agent in helping pharma overcome the challenges which they face. So as a result, we worked with an innovative software company based in Silicon Valley, which recognized early on some of these shifts taking place in the pharma industry. And they saw the need for the medical affairs groups, the leaders of medical affairs, to have access to real-time information in order to provide insights and data to their colleagues, whether that was in commercial or R&D, at the very moment of need. And they recognized also the need to use data visualization and advanced analytics to provide insight in new ways for new audiences. And based on this understanding of the challenges faced by pharma and the urgent need for real-time information that could really be easily understood, digested, and shared, this company, what they did was to create a user-friendly, intuitive software tool which brought together different sources of data and information and put them in the hands of the experts in medical affairs. So today, during this time of patient centricity, where the patient's voice needs to be considered throughout the drug development and approval process, real-time information is absolutely critical. So in conclusion then, I've presented now a couple of key case studies where we've been working with healthcare companies. We've also discussed in the presentation that the US healthcare system is going through a time of unparalleled change, which is impacting patients, providers, and insurance companies. And I've argued that it's technology which is both driving many of these trends as well as offering powerful solutions. So with that, I want to open up to questions from the audience and to see if you have any questions. And you can do that by a couple of different ways. You can either do that via the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen, or you can do that via Twitter using the hashtag HealthSolutions2016. I'll just give it a couple of minutes to see if any questions come in. I see we have one question which has just come in, and that is, what impact do you think big data is going to have on healthcare? And that's a great question. It's very broad in scope, but I think it's a fascinating question to ask. There is ever more data that is being produced, but what is really exciting, for me at least, I think what we see many companies looking at is the ways in which that data can be combined or connected with other sources of data to impact health and impact treatments and impact how our patients interact with the other players in the healthcare industry. Now, there are more and more technology startups looking at how they can better use health data, such as that generated by wearables, for example, or even from more traditional sources. But we also see big names such as Apple and Google getting involved in helping to foster health-related data, and how can that health-related data be better used. I think big data is going to have a significant impact from helping to empower patients manage their own health. That's clearly one of the major trends we see at the moment, or even to help patients or help consumers gather data about their health, which they can then share with their doctor. Big data also has tremendous potential in improving how patients transition through the different stages of care, improving the coordination between the different actors in the healthcare system. I believe also big data is going to be critical to further make the push towards precision medicine, which is really about creating individualized approaches to treating illnesses. It's about aiming to deliver the right treatment at the right time to the right person, and it's an approach which takes into consideration that we all have a different genetic makeup, we live in different environments, we have different lifestyles, all of which are going to play an important role in how we stay healthy or how we treat ourselves when we are ill. But underlying that is the use of data, and underlying that is the analysis of that data, which can then inform the most appropriate treatment. So let's just see if any further questions come in. Let me just check Twitter quickly. And I see we have no further questions at this time, and we are at the half-hour mark. So I think this is a good time to bring the presentation to a close. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining the call today. As mentioned, the healthcare is one of the key industries of Belatrix, so if you are interested in more of the work that we've been doing here, please do let us know. We're always excited and interested to discuss some of the dynamics and some of the changes which are happening in the healthcare industry. So please do reach out to us. You can see my contact details on the final slide there, but also do make sure to contact us. And if you have any follow-up questions, again, please make sure to let us know. With that, I'd like to say thank you to everyone and have a good rest of the day.